For a brief moment, it looked as though another star was going to clamber aboard the #MeToo bandwagon. Actress Pam Dawber starred opposite Robin Williams in the hit comedy show from the 70s, Mork and Mindy, and was interviewed for an upcoming biography on the comic, who died in 2014. Her memories of working with Williams? Quotes, "I was flashed, humped, bumped, grabbed," recalled 66-year-old Pam. And she added he would sometimes wrestle her to the ground and lie on top of her, or appear stark naked when they're about to start filming. Much like Rachel. None of which am I seeking to defend, and all of which is way beyond the normal biff and bat of workplace hijinks. However, just as I feared Scotland Yard might try to get involved, knowing their love of pursuing cases involving celebrities long since departed, I noticed Dawber's closing comment, and I quote, "It was so much fun. It was the 70s after all." Judging events of decades ago by today's puritanically paralysed Moors is absurd. Let's move on. There's nothing to see here.
That was almost as good as my storm in a teacup. Well, as you know, I'm a strong supporter of both Me Too and Time's Up. But I do think, and actually, Rachel, you and I have discussed this, what needs to happen is a much more nuanced debate. And at the moment, we're conflating slightly inappropriate behaviour with real sexual harassment and real sexual assault, in the same way that we know that there's a difference between a shoplifter and an armed robber, and the conversation we have about the two are completely different. So I think the good thing about what Pam has done is perhaps it will actually open up that nuance within this conversation and allow more women to express themselves and not feel victimised all the time, because she's saying she wasn't a victim. She's saying that actually that was the culture at the time, and she found it quite funny.
We opened the show with you quite rightly being labelled as being hysterical, Rachel. Has there been hysteria here, though? Again, not condoning recent acts, but we go back, as June rightly says. Has there been a degree of hysteria in #MeToo?
It's not hysteria.
My point on Me Too is that if we're not going to be like Leave and Remain, constantly at war. We've got to take #MenToo along with the Me Too movement. It cannot be oppositional. It's got to be united.
Yes.
But going to your Nanu Mork and Mindy case, which I think is hysterical and also refreshing.
In what way refreshing?
Well, in the sense that it's a woman refusing to be a victim.
Rachel wishes that Robbie Williams gave her that much attention.
Accepting that, you know, male-female relations can be a bit of a rough and tumble. But however, it was the 70s, is the Jimmy Savile defence. And Carol and I are of the age where, you know, we're pretty robust when it comes to these things. And we absolutely refuse, you know, to accept that we are victims and, you know, you have to allow things to happen to you. However, if Robin Williams had stripped off, he was a jolly hairy man. I don't think I would have gone through this next scene.
It was also the Cosby defence, in defence of your point, and so we do need to be slightly careful.
No criminality here with Mork and Mindy.
And that was my next point. That was going to be my next point.
But that is my point. Yeah.
You took the words out of my mouth. So in that, yes, the defence can sometimes fall apart. In the Cosby case and in the Jimmy Savile case, it clearly does fall apart, because you can't just say that was the 70s when you're raping children or drugging women, right? But actually, to June's point, we do have to differentiate between various types of assaults. I think you're right, June. We have to be able to... But somebody tried that, didn't they? Matt Damon. Well, tried to differentiate and parse out the various things and got shouted down.
Let's go to cases where we have got as much detail as we can work with. Carol, strangely quiet, but I sense of all the people around the panel...
I'm just waiting my turn.
Yes, indeed. You're probably the closest to my thinking on this, I would guess.
I wanted to cheer this woman because I think she pricked the moral pomposity of some of the Me Too Time's Up brigade. You know, I really resent this idea that women are reduced to a quivering mass of fear and nerves if a guy brushes your hair, or if he makes a lunge at you, or if he grabs your ass. The idea that we can't, most women can't.
Might be, Carol.
Oh no, seriously.
You know,
You know, but the thing,
in a second.
but we're not quivering. We're not weak. We're not these powerless in the face
You're not,
of unwanted.
Carol,
But
others
most
might.
women aren't. They
Okay,
shouldn't
all right,
be.
I'll allow you
The
most.
idea that you go running to HR because a guy grazes his hand across your knee, that is not abuse, and it's what June was talking
Is this
about.
a generational
This is
No,
this
but
is a
Carol,
woman.
Can we make the point about power?
Of
If
course.
the man has
Yeah.
power over the woman and is, you know, in a position of authority
Yes.
over,
Yeah.
then we have
But
to
we don't
accept
have to keep
it's
qualifying
not
that.
right.
We know that that's what we're talking about. But what this lady highlights, Pam Dawber, is the difference between... She saw the difference between fun and mischief and
Yes,
flirting
yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
real predatory behaviour.
Yeah. And there is a difference.
And there's a
There is a
massive difference. And I'm sorry, in the Me Too, Time's Up situations, many people will refuse to see the difference, refuse to admit it's there. And that's...
And
Jim.
I agree with a lot of what you said.
Wow.
Yes. And some of it,
There you
not
go.
so much. Not the
We got there.
running to HR bit, because I think that's what
Some
HR
girls
is there
won't
for.
be able to take it.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think that's what HR is there for. We need due process.
But isn't the way it's done, the way this flirting is done, that makes
But-
a difference?
but-
He was a funny guy.
Yeah, but anyway, what I'd love to do is show a clip of Tarana Burke, who's the founder of the Me Too movement. Here's what she has to say.
Sexual violence is deeply pervasive and it touches everybody across race, class, and gender and ability. And so we have to kind of find ways to work together in order to move the needle.
And I think back to Rachel's point
what Rachel
about
said, yeah.
men too, is where sexual harassment and sexual assault is concerned, it's usually a small group of men actually committing the majority of the crimes. So in the case of Harvey Weinstein, it was him in that company doing the majority of the harassment. And I think this is the problem. It's not the majority of men. It's a few men that are actually doing a lot of harm. And so therefore we should make sure that the conversation is clear.
But June, when
the
Matt
moment
Damon
we're
tried to make
grouping all men
and so when
into
Matt Damon
this
tried to,
whole
I think it was Matt
category.
Damon, wasn't it? Tried to make the nuanced point you're
Yeah.
making about the categorisation of the different crimes.
Yeah.
You know, shoplifting
He was
isn't
shouted
armed
down.
robbery. He wasn't just shouted down. He was like
to leave
hounded.
Twitter,
Yeah, he was hounded. He had
Apologise.
to, and it's like I think
That's wrong.
A man needs to be able to make this point as well as a woman.
It can't be a
of course,
female-only
No,
conversation.
that's the
Precisely.
reason.
Yeah.
That's the reason
No,
why.
but
you know.
can I just say what Catherine Deneuve, if you remember, she spoke out at the time,
Yeah.
you know, against the Me Too Brigade, and she says, what began as freeing women up to speak has today turned into the opposite. We intimidate people into speaking correctly, shout down those who don't fall into line, and those women who refuse to bend are regarded as complicit and traitors. And I'm afraid that's what's happened in many ways to the Me Too.
So how is the dialogue won back, June?
But I think it's important that women like ourselves who think the way we do, that we stand up, and actually we're the ones that create a space for men to enter the conversation. And I do think it's evolving. I do think it's... Don't forget, this has just started. So we're at the beginning of this. I do think it's evolving.
You know, Majid, without doubt, Robin Williams would have been a complex and challenging character to work with. A bit like you and Carol Malone in many ways. I mean, the similarities... No, the workplace, has it changed forever, the dynamic in the workplace now?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that in many cases for the better, because of course some of these. So in many cases, I said, in many
It
cases,
is for the
because
better.
in many cases for the better, because some of these excesses that occurred during the workplace were criminal, and so if we can stop at least most of those criminal sides of the transgressions.
Carol, you shrug, but
then
if young women were being illegally preyed
Yes,
upon...
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how the rules that are now in place will make it almost impossible for any workplace banter. Men and women have to be able
That's
to
not
interact
true.
in the workplace. You know, when you think about it, many people's relationships are formed in the
but
workplace.
Carol, don't you think we do need to
There's
have...
one.
I would never have had
There's
sex
one.
if it wasn't in the
Yes,
workplace,
yes.
and I've never had a date, I don't know. Oh,
Perfectly understandable, Nick.
So I think some of the rules now in place are, you know... I
But
just think-
Carol, don't you think we do need rules?
We do
We
need
do
rules.
need
We do,
people
but
to know what the boundaries
We do, but
are.
as Catherine Deneuve just said, it's turned into a movement where people have to speak correctly, and they have to be careful about every word they say, every gesture they make, every touch they make. You know, can a guy, would you in an office now touch a woman's arm?
But maybe it's
that
going to
might calm
take
down.
that to get to...
It might calm down.
Yeah, exactly.
The dust might settle.
History normally says it just builds on itself, doesn't
I
it?
don't
Well,
think
because
so.
no, you know why? Because if you put these rules down that are so impossible to adhere to and are so unhuman, you know, because human beings, whether with a man or a woman, I will do this, right? You know, you see me around my guy friends, my arms around them all the time. You know?
Yeah.
What they call it, horse play. play.
Yeah.
So
Would you do it with a woman in the office now? Would you put an arm
I
around
think
her
it will
shoulder?
calm down.
You're still going on those single men's weekends to Amsterdam all the time. You're still going on those.
Yeah.
What is it all about?
I think the dust will settle. I think it will.
Everybody